First Sunday of Advent. What must I do to attain everlasting life? And the message of Jesus Christ on the first Sunday of Advent is that you must watch. And that is the first lesson that we must learn in order to attain everlasting life. To watch. The first Sunday of Advent commemorates the first coming of Christ, while last Sunday, the Feast of Christ the King, is the commemoration of the second coming of Christ. The first coming of Christ is supposed to be for us to watch in preparation for our death, while the second coming of Christ, commemorated on the Feast of Christ the King, is a reminder of also our death, but if it occurs at the second coming of Christ or the general judgment day. That is why you will notice that the message of Christ the King that commemorates the general judgment day and the message of the first Sunday of Christmas, which is a preparation for Christmas, which is Advent, are identical. To watch for the coming of our death, to watch for the coming of Christ, to demand an accounting of our lives. And so the first reading of Advent reminds us to look at the mountain, because it is from the mountain that Christ would come. If you will notice in the Gospel, every time Christ would preach those sublime teachings, he always taught it when he was on the mountain, to show precisely that his teachings are sublime. Later on, the Gospels and the readings will refer to the mountain as Zion or Jerusalem, for Jerusalem was found in a mountain. And of course, in the early Christian times, the first monasteries were usually found on mountains like Monte Cassino. So, to watch for the coming of our death, or to watch for the coming of Christ, to demand an account of our life, is the preparation for Advent and for Christmas. It is also the preparation for the general judgment, which is commemorated on Christ the King. And therefore, what must we do to be watchful? And the Gospel reminds us of the days of Noah. During the days of Noah, people were celebrating, they were eating and drinking and marrying, but they were also living life of pleasure. And so God wanted to punish the world during that time, and so he separated the people into two groups, those who are meant to be punished by the great flood, while the other ones are the ones who are going to be saved, the family of Noah. And so God told Noah to build an ark, which is the symbol of the Catholic Church. The ark had been dictated and planned by God himself. If you will notice, every size of the windows, the doors of the wood were dictated by God himself. Noah could not choose the size of the wood that he would use. The size were all dictated, the kind of wood, and so forth and so on. Which shows us that in the Catholic Church, everything that is done within her should be in accordance to God's will. And so God told Noah to build the ark. And as long as Noah was building the ark, the sinful and the wicked man were allowed to continue in their sins. But the moment it was time for accounting, then God Himself, Genesis said, Himself closed the door of the ark after the family of Noah has entered. Meaning to say, during the approach of the general judgment day, Christ will close the Catholic Church. So there will be a time when people can no longer enter the Catholic Church. Therefore, those who are destined, or as St. Thomas says, are predestined to go to heaven will all be inside the Catholic Church before the general judgment day, or before the signs of the end times are approaching, which are all described on the last 2 weeks before and after Christ the King. And the moment the Catholic Church is closed, then the sinners and the wicked men will be condemned to hell. And so St. Thomas of Aquin says, when those days happen, the angels will be seeing all those who are going to be condemned. They will be standing up in testimony and judging those who are going to be condemned, while on the other hand, the angels will open the heavens so that those who are predestined to go to heaven can see the inside of heaven. So the days of Noah is a way by which God is foretelling us what will happen today. Today, the year 2019, exactly the same thing will happen. The ark, the Catholic Church, is being now open, still open. The doors are still open. We can still enter the Catholic Church, while the sinners are allowed to continue committing sin. And so if we ask how come God is permitting all sinners to continue sinning, it's because the church is still open. The doors are still open. And therefore the sinners can still repent. And therefore God still allows them. And so God, in today's gospel, reminds us that during the time of Noah, there was a time that the doors will be closed. And the moment it is closed, even if you want to enter the ark, you cannot enter. And so these days, exactly the same thing will happen. The Catholic Church doors are open, and during the feast of Christ the King, Holy Mother the Church taught us by the example of the good thief how to enter the door. But one day that door will be closed, and anybody who wants to enter it can no longer enter. There is sort of a deadline. And so the message of Christ for us today, the first Sunday of Advent, is for us to watch the mountain, to watch the messenger that God will send us in order to teach us the way to attain everlasting life.